Ma Huateng's Nanshan Always-Wins Company. How Tencent devours the rule of law, captures the judiciary, and controls public opinion. The true face of Tencent. A dark alliance of capital, judiciary, public relations, and power. Many Chinese people believe Tencent is merely a private internet company. Many members of the American public, global investors, and international media may also believe Tencent is simply one of China's largest internet platforms, a commercial giant in WeChat, gaming, payments, advertising, and cloud services. Many people believe Ma Huateng is merely a low-profile, refined, bespectacled, quiet technology entrepreneur. But in my view, all of this is merely the surface image that Tencent has carefully packaged over many years. The real Tencent has long ceased to be an ordinary private enterprise. Tencent is China's well-known Nanshan Always-Wins Company. Tencent is a semi-state Leviathan, wearing the outer shell of a private enterprise while possessing a quasi-state power structure. Tencent is not merely rich. Tencent is not merely well-connected. What is truly frightening about Tencent is that it appears to have formed a highly integrated power machine, combining corporate capital, judicial resources, media public relations, government relations, internal security, and public opinion control. Once this machine is activated, it can suppress the media, block public discussion, frame employees, retaliate against whistleblowers, influence judicial narratives, and even turn an ordinary labor dispute into a systematic campaign of encirclement against a reporting employee. I am a direct witness to this machine. I am not an observer. I am not a commentator. I am not someone listening to stories told by others. I worked at Tencent for 7 years. I was a whistleblower who reported internal corruption, by real name to Tencent's anti-fraud department and to Ma Huateng himself. I am also the person whom Tencent used 32 consecutive days of workstation, surveillance footage to frame, fire, suppress, intimidate, and silence. My case is a window into Tencent's true face. If the American public, global investors, and international media want to truly understand Tencent, do not only look at its financial reports, do not only look at its ESG narrative, do not only look at its charity advertisements, do not only look at Ma Huateng's low-profile public persona, and do not only look at how convenient WeChat is in Chinese society. Look at how Tencent treats someone who reported corruption by real name. Look at how Tencent uses surveillance. Look at how Tencent makes the media go silent. Look at how Tencent turns absurd logic into judicial rulings. Look at how Tencent causes judges to write the words coercive measures into a court transcript. Look at how Tencent removes a whistleblower from the company and then tries to remove him from public memory. That is the real Tencent. Tencent is not an ordinary company, but a semi-state Leviathan. In my view, Tencent is not a private company in the traditional sense, nor is it simply a capital group. It is a quasi-state technological power entity that grew out of the structural cracks of Chinese society. On the surface, it is a market-oriented company. In reality, it possesses certain state-like attributes. It has a vast legal system. It has a powerful public relations machine. It has a deep government relations network. It has internal security and investigation systems. It has the ability to control the flow of information. It has the ability to influence media silence. It has the ability to compress major negative events into ordinary disputes. It has the ability to shape the judicial environment in commercial disputes. If a company merely sells products, earns profits, pays salaries, and pays taxes, then it is still only a company. But when a company's legal, public relations, government relations, security, internal investigation, media handling, litigation, and crisis management systems are integrated under a unified power structure, it is no longer merely a company. It becomes a quasi-political organization. It becomes a power entity capable of influencing the operation of society. Tencent is one of the most mature, most typical, and most frightening examples of this structure in China. It does not openly possess a coercive apparatus in the way a traditional state organ does, but it is able to borrow, influence, guide, and mobilize certain state-like resources. It is not a court formally judging others, but it can shape the evidentiary environment, legal narrative, and direction of adjudication and litigation. It is not a propaganda department directly censoring news, but it is able to make media reports disappear, cool down trending topics, delete articles, and restrict discussion. It is not a public security organ openly enforcing the law, but when I was interviewed by foreign media, police phone calls and visits to my residence appeared with precision. This is what I call a semi-state Leviathan. It is not the state, but it possesses state-like capacity to oppress individuals. It is not a judicial organ, but it can tilt judicial logic in its own favor. It is not a propaganda machine, but it can decide which facts are allowed to be seen and which facts must disappear. For the American public, global investors, and international media, this point is extremely important. It means that Tencent cannot be understood only as a Chinese technology company, nor merely as a commercial issuer. It should be understood as a hybrid power entity embedded within China's political, judicial, media, and capital structures. 2. Nanshan Always-Wins is not a joke, but a disgrace to China's judiciary. In China, Tencent has a nationally known nickname, Nanshan Always-Wins Company. Many people hear it as a joke. But I tell you, this is not a joke. This is reality. This is a living specimen of China's judiciary being captured by capital. My case is the most direct, concrete, absurd, and probative example. I reported major internal corruption and internal control, failure by real name to Tencent's anti-fraud department and to Ma Huateng himself. Under normal circumstances, a company with real governance capacity should investigate corruption, protect whistleblowers, hold responsible parties accountable, and improve internal controls. But what did Tencent do? Tencent did not truly eliminate the corruption chain. Tencent did not protect me, the reporting employee. Instead, Tencent retrieved 32 consecutive days of surveillance footage aimed at my workstation and distorted the normal work activities of a software engineer into the claim that I did not sit at my workstation for 8 hours per day. I ask global investors and international media to think carefully about this. Is the work of a software engineer simply to sit motionless in a chair? Do meetings not count as work? Do discussions of requirements not count as work? Does going to a lab for testing not count as work? Does reporting to managers not count as work? Does cross-building communication not count as work? Are going to the bathroom, drinking water, eating, and resting all to be treated as absence from duty? Tencent normally claims to have a flexible working system, relying on employees' night work, weekend work, and long-term high-pressure labor to generate profits. But when it wanted to eliminate a whistleblower, its flexible working system suddenly disappeared and turned into prison-style workstation attendance. Normally, it is striver culture. When firing me, it became prison culture. Normally, Tencent encourages collaboration. When firing me, it recognized only the chair. Normally, Tencent relies on engineers to solve problems. When firing me, it looked only at whether my backside was glued to the workstation. This logic is so absurd that it insults common sense. But what is even more frightening is that this logic did not collapse in Guangdong's 3-level court system. The Shenzhen Nanshan District People's Court accepted it. The Shenzhen Intermediate People's Court upheld it. The Guangdong High People's Court did not overturn it. What does this mean? It means Tencent successfully pushed a theory completely detached from common sense, work reality, and basic fairness through 3 levels of courts in Guangdong. This is the most terrifying part of Nanshan Always-Wins. It was not that Tencent won a lawsuit. It was that Tencent turned absurdity into legal text. It was not that Tencent defeated me. It was that Tencent made common sense kneel in court. It was not that Tencent proved I was wrong. It was that Tencent proved it could turn a whistleblower into a defendant, turn surveillance footage into a noose, and turn judicial procedure into a tool for removing a reporting employee. For American investors, this is not merely a Chinese labor dispute. It exposes a deeper problem. If a Chinese technology giant can push absurd logic into a judicial result within China's domestic court system, can outside investors still trust that company's governance narrative, compliance narrative, and internal control narrative? 3. Tencent turned surveillance into a tool of private punishment. In my case, Tencent's core evidence was workstation surveillance footage. This was not ordinary attendance tracking. This was a premeditated framing. Tencent did not provide complete working hour records. Tencent did not provide complete access control data. Tencent did not provide complete evidence of my meetings, testing, communication, or overtime. Tencent did not provide footage after 6 p.m. Tencent did not provide records of possible weekend work. Tencent provided only partial video favorable to itself. It is like someone cutting off one corner of a photograph with scissors and then telling the court, "This is the entire picture." Even more absurdly, these videos had serious problems, including interruptions, discontinuity, timestamp abnormalities, and incomplete content. But in front of Tencent, these problems did not stop the court from accepting them. This is what angers me the most. If Tencent can do this to me, it can do this to any employee. Today, it can say leaving your workstation is absence from duty. Tomorrow, it can say drinking water is a disciplinary violation. The day after tomorrow, it can say attending. A meeting away from your seat is absenteeism. When a company can use surveillance fragments to define your work, and when a court can accept such fragments while ignoring workplace reality, then the fate of every worker can be decided by a camera. This is not management. This is private punishment. This is not technology. This is a digital shackle. This is not tech for good. This is tech for evil. The most evil part of Ma Huateng and Tencent is not that they have cameras, but that they turned cameras into a weapon for eliminating a whistleblower. IV. Tencent's grand legal system is a machine for suppressing truth. Tencent is frightening not merely because it knows how to litigate. Tencent is frightening because it has a complete grand legal system. This system integrates legal affairs, government relations, public relations, administration, internal security, crisis management, media response, and litigation strategy. It is not an ordinary corporate legal department. It is a power center for suppressing truth. When a normal company encounters internal corruption, it should investigate corruption. When Tencent encounters internal corruption, it appears more skilled at investigating the whistleblower. When a normal company encounters a whistleblower, it should protect the whistleblower. When Tencent encounters a whistleblower, it turns that person into a source of trouble, a source of risk, and a target for attack. When a normal company encounters media reporting, it should respond to the facts. When Tencent encounters media reporting, it can cause reports to be deleted, traffic to be throttled, and heat to be cooled down. When a normal company enters litigation, it should accept neutral review. When Tencent enters court, it can obtain judicial endorsement for an absurd workstation surveillance theory. In my case, nothing happened in isolation. After I reported corruption, I was surveilled and fired. After I tried to speak out, I encountered media silence. When I was interviewed by foreign media, I encountered police phone calls and police visits. When I continued to defend my rights, I encountered judicial threats of coercive measures. Taken together, these events are not an ordinary corporate dispute. This is a system. This is a machine. This is a suppression structure intertwined with capital, judiciary, media, and the shadow of public power. For global investors, this structure means that the governance image Tencent presents to capital markets may not be a naturally formed, transparent result, but a controlled reality, jointly shaped by legal affairs, public relations, the judicial environment, and public opinion control. Kaitian and Tencent's back-end control system. In my view, to understand Tencent, one cannot look only at Ma Huateng. One must also look at the people inside. Tencent, who are responsible for legal affairs, public relations, government relations, administration, and the back-end control system. Tencent Senior Vice President Kaitian has long been responsible for Tencent's important back-end system, including legal affairs, government relations, public relations, administration, security management, and crisis handling mechanisms. In an ordinary company, these departments might simply be support functions. But in a semi-state Leviathan like Tencent, they are power systems. Deleted media reports are connected to the PR system. Blocked platform information is connected to public opinion handling. How litigation strategy is designed is connected to the legal system. How external pressure is coordinated is connected to government relations. How employees are investigated, handled, and removed is connected to internal security, human resources, and legal systems. The long-term suppression I experienced as a whistleblower, including deleted media reports, restricted information on domestic platforms, the dilution of my whistleblower identity, the packaging of my case as an ordinary labor dispute, police intimidation, judicial pressure, and Tencent's 2026 lawsuit against me in Shenzhen is functionally highly related to Tencent's grandeur. Legal and back-end control system. Therefore, Kaitian is not an ordinary executive. In my view, he is a key figure in Tencent's suppression system who must be questioned. A truly normal company does not need such a vast back-end power system to deal with a real-name whistleblower. A truly clean company does not need to package an internal corruption report as an attendance issue. A company that truly respects the rule of law does not need to turn workstation surveillance into a blade for eliminating a whistleblower. For international media, Kaitian does not represent an ordinary corporate executive role, but rather an organizational node that deserves serious investigation. How legal affairs, public relations, government relations, administration, security management, and crisis handling are integrated inside Tencent into a highly coordinated suppression system. Be how Tencent captures the judiciary. Tencent's influence over the judiciary did not form overnight. For a long time, publicly available information has shown that Tencent has absorbed large numbers of people with backgrounds in the courts, procuratorates, and public security organs. This revolving door phenomenon is not accidental. When people from the court system enter Tencent, bringing familiarity with how courts think, how judges decide, how evidence is organized, and how legal interpretations are pushed forward, Tencent is no longer merely an ordinary litigant. Tencent becomes a super litigation machine that understands courts, judges, procedure, loopholes in rules, and judicial psychology, especially in areas such as intellectual property, game copyrights, platform liability, antitrust, and labor disputes. Tencent has built an influence network covering academia, the judiciary, regulators, and the media through research institutions, expert cooperation, funding, academic projects, and industry influence. Some academic views enter court judgments. Some corporate interests are packaged as industry rules. Some capital demands are rewritten as legal interpretations. Over time, law is no longer merely a neutral set of rules, but is gradually shaped by certain large platform companies. This is judicial capture. More bluntly, it means capital gradually makes the law grow into the shape it needs. This is the root reason Tencent is called Nanshan Always-Wins Company in China. It does not win by accident. It has long cultivated an environment in which it is easier for itself to win. It is not simply that Tencent understands the law. It is that Tencent has the ability to participate in shaping the way law operates. That is what is most frightening. For the American public and global investors, this is not a distant Chinese social issue, but a core issue directly related to Tencent's risk disclosure as a listed company, the reliability of its internal controls, and the independence of dispute resolution. Savannah Media. Silence is the other face of the Tencent empire. Tencent can influence not only judicial narratives but also media visibility. After I was fired, I repeatedly tried to explain the truth to the media. Many journalists were interested at first, even shocked, but very soon they fell silent. In December 2021, TCEHY Daily published an important report containing screenshots of my whistleblower report. That report was extremely important because it touched the evidentiary chain showing that I had reported corruption to Tencent's senior leadership, but it quickly disappeared from the Chinese internet. Why can ordinary labor dispute reports remain, while reports involving screenshots of a whistleblower letter, Ma Huateng's knowledge, and Tencent's internal corruption disappear so quickly? What does this show? It shows that what truly cannot be touched is not the labor dispute. What truly cannot be touched is Tencent's corruption. What truly cannot be touched is Ma Huateng's knowledge. What truly cannot be touched is the failure of Tencent's anti-fraud system. What truly cannot be touched is retaliation against a whistleblower. In China, Tencent does not only control products, it also controls silence. It knows which topics may be discussed. It knows which facts must disappear. It knows how to compress a case, involving internal corruption and corporate governance, collapse into an ordinary employee attendance dispute. This is Tencent's PR capability. It is also Tencent's evil capability. For international media, the most important question is not why Tencent has no negative press, but why some facts that should have become major, investigative reports, ultimately never entered public view. Fate. Police intervention turned corporate suppression into the shadow of public power. In January 2020, I was interviewed in Shenzhen by a journalist from the Financial Times about Tencent's internal corruption and my experience as a whistleblower. During the interview, the local police station called me and warned me not to speak recklessly and not to accept interviews from foreign media. The next morning, police officers came to my residence. There were no formal legal documents. There was no clear law enforcement basis. There was only a claim that the municipal bureau had received intelligence. They claimed that I published articles online exposing Tencent's brutal and retaliatory termination practices. At that moment, I clearly realized that the Tencent matter was no longer merely a corporate dispute. It had entered the realm of public power intimidation. Why would an ordinary employee, a real name whistleblower, and a person being interviewed by foreign media be targeted by the police so precisely? Why did the police call as soon as the foreign media interview began? Why did the police come to my home the next morning? Without a high degree of linkage between corporate power and local resources, ordinary people would find it hard to believe that the response could be so swift, precise, and intimidating. This is the shadow of a Tencent version of the Huawei 251 incident. The Huawei 251 incident showed the entire country how a technology giant could use local power to pressure an employee. My experience shows that Tencent has a similar danger. When a company's hand reaches into the media, into the courts, and into police resources, the individual is no longer fighting a company. The individual is fighting a semi-state machine. For the American public and international media, this scene is especially important. When an internal whistleblower at a Chinese technology company speaks to foreign media and local police quickly appear. This is not only a personal safety issue, but also a cross-border press freedom issue, a corporate power boundary issue, and a governance risk that global investors should pay attention to. Lie. The court's threat of coercive measures was a gag order written into the judicial record. On April 20th, 2022, during a hearing at the Shenzhen Intermediate People's Court, the presiding judge formally admonished me in court and wrote the content into the court transcript. The court explicitly stated that it had seen my online posts and warned that if I continued to publicly post case information, coercive measures could be taken against me. Tencent's lawyer stated in court that he understood and signed the transcript. I asked the American public, global investors, and international media to think carefully. What kind of scene is this? An ordinary labor dispute. A former employee seeking overtime pay and a year-end bonus. A real-name whistleblower hoping to make facts public. Yet the court warned during the hearing that if I continued posting, coercive measures could be taken. This was not ordinary courtroom order management. This was silencing. This was a threat. This was using judicial language to suppress public expression. This was fixing the company's desire to make me shut up into a court transcript. And Tencent's lawyer signed and confirmed it. What does this mean? It means Tencent and the judicial scene formed a suffocating tacit understanding. The court threatened a whistleblower with coercive measures. Tencent's lawyer received that signal beside it. This is the Nanshan Always-Wins Company I saw with my own eyes. This is the judicial capture risk I personally experienced. This is why I say Tencent is not an ordinary company, but a semi-state Leviathan. For global investors, this means that case outcomes produced by Chinese domestic courts cannot simply be understood as independent, neutral, and transparent judicial review. They may themselves be part of the pressure exerted by power. X. Tencent's greatest evil is packaging all evil as legal. Tencent's real sophistication and its real evil lies in the fact that it rarely says openly, "I want to suppress you." It packages everything. It says this is a labor dispute. It says this is an attendance issue. It says this is a company policy. It says this is lawful litigation. It says this is reputation protection. It says this is protecting commercial goodwill. It says this is normal public relations. It says this is compliance management. But when all the links are connected, the truth becomes very clear. After I reported corruption, I was surveilled. After the surveillance, I was fired. After I was fired, reporting was suppressed. When I accepted a foreign media interview, police intervened. When I continued speaking out, the court threatened coercive measures. Later, after I came to the United States and continued disclosing facts, Tencent sued me again in Shenzhen, demanding deletion, blocking, link disconnection, apology, and compensation. These are not isolated events. This is a chain. This is a system. This is Tencent's complete mechanism for suppressing a whistleblower. Tencent's evil does not lie in the absence of legal packaging. Tencent's evil lies precisely in the fact that it can always find legal packaging for suppression. It packages retaliation as management. It packages framing as evidence. It packages censorship as public relations. It packages intimidation as judicial order. It packages cross-border suppression as reputation protection. That is what makes it most sinister. For international investors, the real risk is not whether Tencent has a beautiful compliance document. The real risk is whether behind those compliance documents there exists a power machine, capable of packaging retaliation, censorship, and judicial pressure as lawful procedure. Soin, my 3 stages. As a Tencent whistleblower, I have gone through 3 stages. In the first stage, while I was still working at Tencent, I was an internal whistleblower. I reported corruption to Tencent's anti-fraud department. I reported corruption by real name to Ma Huateng himself. I hoped the company would correct itself internally. I hoped the so-called high-voltage line truly worked. I hoped Tencent would protect whistleblowers, but the facts proved that I was too naive. In the second stage, after Tencent fired me, I continued speaking out while still in China. I reported Tencent and Ma Huateng to the public, the media, and relevant authorities. I exposed how Tencent used workstation surveillance to frame me. I exposed how Tencent suppressed the media. I exposed judicial injustice. I exposed the judicial manipulation and suspected judicial bribery behind Nanshan Always-Wins. In the third stage, I came to the United States. I brought the same evidence and concerns to the American public, the global public, and international media. Because Tencent is not only a China issue, Tencent is a global capital market issue. Tencent is an American investor issue. Tencent is a cross-border governance risk issue. Tencent is an issue concerning the true power structure of Chinese technology giants. The reason I continue speaking is that I know, once I fall silent, Tencent wins. Once a whistleblower is eliminated, corruption remains. Once truth is deleted, lies become history. Clue. Tencent, you bastard, is not just a headline, but a verdict on an era. In a truly open society, the truth may be delayed, but it will not be buried alive forever. But under Tencent's shadow, what I have seen is a different order. Journalists can fall silent. Reports can disappear. Trending topics can cool down. Articles can be deleted. Platform discussion can be throttled. A whistleblower's evidence can be compressed into an ordinary labor dispute. A major event involving internal corruption, judicial capture, media censorship, and public power intimidation can be washed by Tencent's PR, machine into a story about employee attendance. This is the most frightening part of Tencent. It does not merely control products. It controls narratives. It does not merely possess traffic. It decides which facts can be seen and which truths must disappear from the internet. TCEHY Daily's report was a public report produced after formal media interviews. It was not rumor. It was not self-media gossip. It was not street talk. But it was quickly wiped from the entire internet. Why? Because that report touched what Tencent feared most. Not attendance. Not a labor dispute. But the evidentiary chain showing that I, as an internal Tencent whistleblower, had reported corruption to Tencent's senior leadership. As long as the matter remained working less than 8 hours per day, Tencent could control the narrative. Once the matter became, I was fired after reporting corruption by real name to Ma Huateng. Tencent's painted skin would be torn open. So the report had to disappear. So journalists had to fall silent. So the public could only see the version Tencent wanted them to see. So what global investors see is always the cleaned, polished, packaged ESG report, not the real governance black hole inside Tencent. In 2010, Chinese media once wrote a headline that shocked the entire country. "Tencent, you bastard!" At the time, many people thought it was merely an expression of media anger. Looking back today, it reads more like a verdict on an era. It had already exposed Tencent's true nature. Ma Huateng has long worn glasses and projected an image of refinement, elegance, low-profile restraint, and quietness. He does not shout loudly. He does not bare his teeth. He rarely stands at the front of the stage to attack others. But in my view, judging a person should not depend only on how he smiles in front of the camera. You must look at what machine he activates when his interests are threatened. You must look at what forces appear behind him in commercial competition. You must look at whether he protects whistleblowers or eliminates them. You must look at whether, when facing corruption, he holds internal parasites accountable, or allows the person who reported corruption to be surveilled, fired, silenced, and sued. The most frightening part of Ma Huateng is not a fierce outward appearance. Quite the opposite. The most frightening part of him is a gentle exterior and a cold, ruthless interior. He himself appears like a silent technology entrepreneur. But once Tencent's machine is activated, it reveals an entirely different face. Legal affairs move in. Public relations move in. The media falls silent. Platforms throttle traffic. Courts accept the narrative. Police appear. The whistleblower is removed. Truth is pressed down. This is not an ordinary company. This is a semi-state Leviathan. Looking back over more than 20 years of China's internet history, Tencent has appeared again and again at the center of the fiercest, cruelest, and most unequal commercial conflicts. In 2007, after Tencent filed a police report, Shenzhen police went to Beijing to arrest Chen Shufu, the creator of Coral QQ. Chen Shufu was later sentenced to 3 years in prison. In 2010, during the war between Tencent and 360, Ma Huateng sent more than 30 Shenzhen police officers to Beijing to arrest Zhou Hongyi, leaving an extremely glaring mark in the history of China's internet. In 2014, Wang Xin, the founder of QVOD, was arrested and later sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. To this day, many people in the industry still believe Tencent played an extremely critical role in driving the QVOD case. Around 2019, Tencent and ByteDance were locked in intense conflict. In March 2020, Li Liang, vice president of public relations at Douyin, publicly published the first and middle parts of an article titled "The Cross-Province Major Case," triggered by Ma Huateng's WeChat moments, post and assigned by higher authorities late at night, which mentioned that Nanjing case-handling authorities went to ByteDance's Beijing office to question senior executives including Zhang Yiming and Zhang Lidong. In February 2021, the Wall Street Journal reported that Feng, Tencent's government relations executive, had been arrested for being involved in the Lijun case, and that Feng had worked for many years in the Central Organization Department. According to the information released in Li Liang's article, the truly frightening part is not on the surface of the text. It is the faintly visible power chain behind the text. Ordinary people read such articles and see only a commercial dispute. People who understand can immediately see that this was no longer ordinary competition between ByteDance and Tencent. It was a power exercise in which a platform giant used political legal resources, cross-province law enforcement power, and security systems to carry out institutional intimidation against a competitor. In June 2019, Nanjing case handling authorities went to Beijing and demanded to question Zhang Yiming and Zhang Lidong. What kind of concept is this? Why would a commercial competition case draw such a strange political legal line between Shenzhen, Beijing, and Nanjing? Why would the commercial conflict between Tencent and ByteDance evolve into Nanjing case handling authorities going to Beijing to find ByteDance's core executives? Why would one movement in Ma Huateng's WeChat moments trigger a so-called cross-province major case assigned by higher authorities late at night? In my view, what Li Liang's article truly pierced was not an isolated case, but the underlying logic of the Tencent-style semi-state Leviathan. Tencent has never relied only on product competition. Tencent relies on an entire back-end system. Legal affairs open the road in front. Public relations whitewash outside. Government relations coordinate in the shadows. Security systems execute internally. When necessary, the shadow of political legal resources emerges. According to relevant public information and open-source intelligence analysis, the truly terrifying part of that chain around 2019 is that it may have touched higher-level political legal systems. Sun Liun, Wang Like. Both names were later officially investigated and punished. Wang Like was serving as Secretary of the Jiangsu Provincial Political and Legal Affairs Commission in 2019. Sun Lijun was the former Vice Minister of Public Security, an extremely influential figure in China's political legal system. If the direction implied by Li Liang's article is true, then the so-called Nanjing case handling authorities' trip to Beijing was certainly not an ordinary local law enforcement action, but rather a dangerous signal that political legal system power had been drawn into a commercial war between internet giants. This is the most frightening part. It was not Tencent and ByteDance fighting. It was the suspected shadow of political legal power appearing behind a commercial war. It was not companies suing each other. It was platform competition potentially sliding toward cross-province case handling, police intervention, and political resource mobilization. This was no longer market competition. This was the Leviathan baring its teeth. And inside Tencent, the people responsible for connecting this power to the corporate machine were not ordinary business executives. According to public reporting, Zhang Feng, Tencent's government relations executive, was later investigated in connection with the Sun Lijun case. Zhang Feng had a background working in the Central Organization Department. What does this mean? It means Tencent's government relations system is not an ordinary corporate public affairs department. It connects to power. It understands the system. It operates at the gray interface between political legal power, regulation, public opinion, and corporate interests. In addition, open-source information and online leaks have repeatedly mentioned Tang Jinhui. Tang Jinhui reportedly worked for many years in the Jiangsu cyber police system, later joined Tencent, and served as deputy general manager of its security management department. If relevant online leaks are true, and Tang Jinhui was taken away because of involvement in the Wang Like case, then this line becomes even clearer. The Jiangsu political legal system, Tencent's security management department, the government relations system, commercial competition cases, cross-province case handling controversies. When these fragments are pieced together, they are not coincidence. They resemble a net extending from the company's internal security department to local political legal resources and then connecting to Tencent's senior back-end control system, Tencent Security Management Department. Itself is not an ordinary corporate security department. An ordinary corporate security department handles access control, office security, data security, and internal control compliance. But Tencent's Security Management Department, in my view, is more like an internal power institution with quasi-policing characteristics. A large number of its personnel have public security, cyber police, investigative, or political legal backgrounds. Zhou Jinsong, the current general manager of Tencent's Security Management Department, has extremely vague public information, stating only that he once did investigative work for many years. Why so vague? Why so evasive? Why not clearly explain the specific resume? Because once such backgrounds are laid out openly, Chinese people will immediately understand Tencent's true structure. Tencent is not an ordinary internet company. Its internal security system is not merely an enterprise security system. It is more like a quasi-law enforcement network composed of former police, former political legal, former investigative, and former cyber police personnel. And above this net is Tencent's back-end power center. Zhang Feng, Tang Jinhui, Zhu Jinsong, On the surface, these people are distributed across government relations, security management, internal control, and other positions. But behind them, they point to the same Tencent grand legal, grand PR, grand government relations, and grand security system. And one of the core figures in this system is Kaitian. Kaitian has long controlled Tencent's legal affairs, public relations, government relations, administration, and key back-end affairs. This is not an ordinary executive division of responsibilities. This is the organizational hub of Tencent's Semi-State Leviathan. Legal affairs are responsible for packaging attacks as litigation. Public relations are responsible for packaging scandals as misunderstandings. Government relations are responsible for connecting corporate interests to power networks. Security systems are responsible for investigation, surveillance, suppression, and execution. When these systems are unified into a single power chain, Tencent is no longer merely a commercial company. It has become a quasi-state machine, capable of mobilizing political legal shadows in commercial competition, eliminating negative information during public opinion crises, and removing whistleblowers through internal governance. This also explains why Tencent always wins, not because it is always right, but because behind it is an entire power, infrastructure unavailable to ordinary companies. When competitors challenge Tencent, they are not facing a product team. They are facing a combination of legal affairs, public relations, government relations, security management, and the shadow of political legal resources. When employees report Tencent, they are not facing an HR department either. They are facing a semi-state Leviathan capable of surveilling you, firing you, censoring you, suing you, making the media fall silent, making courts cooperate, and making police appear. This is what is truly frightening about Tencent. It turns commercial competition into institutional encirclement. It turns corporate security into a quasi-policing system. It turns government relations into a power interface. It turns legal litigation into a suppression tool. It hides a cold machine behind Ma Huateng's gentle face. Therefore, what Li Liang's article truly revealed was not merely one conflict between Tencent and ByteDance. It revealed the darkest operating system of the Tencent empire. On the surface, it was a commercial storm triggered by Ma Huateng's WeChat Moments post. In substance, it was a power exposure of Tencent's semi-state Leviathan, and the names Zhang Feng, Tang Jinhuai, and Zhu Jinsong are precisely the nodes in this system that most deserve to be questioned. They are not isolated individuals. They are part of Tencent's back-end power structure. Behind them is not merely corporate management. It is a dark network woven from legal affairs, government relations, security systems, political legal resources, and capital will. This net is the real foundation of Nanshan Always-Wins. Looking at these events individually, each can be explained as a separate case. But when connected together, an unavoidable question emerges. Why does Tencent's commercial competition always slide toward the boundaries of police, judiciary regulation, and local power? Why do Tencent's opponents not merely lose market competition, but often become caught in criminal risk, cross-province case handling, public opinion encirclement, and institutional attack? Why, whenever Tencent's core interests are challenged, does a power structure far beyond that of an ordinary commercial company always seem to appear behind it? Did Chen Shufu truly deserve 3 years in prison? Did Wang Xin truly deserve 3.5 years? Or were they merely sacrifices crushed by the machine of giant capital in China's internet platform wars? When a company can put competitors under the shadow of criminal punishment, when commercial disputes can evolve into cross-province public power intervention, and when media, courts, police, and platform rules repeatedly tilt in the same direction at critical moments. This is no longer market competition. This is the Leviathan displaying its muscles. This is capital borrowing power. This is a company becoming a quasi-state machine. This is Tencent as I see it. What it is best at is not innovation. It is devouring. Not competition, but encirclement. Not openness, but blockade. Not tech for good, but fusing technology, capital, judiciary, public relations, media, and local resources into a system for suppressing dissent. What global investors should truly be vigilant about is not merely how large Tencent is. It is whether, once Tencent becomes large enough, it has already acquired the ability to make truth disappear, the ability to make journalists fall silent, the ability to make reports be deleted, the ability to make courts accept absurd logic, the ability to remove whistleblowers, the ability to let Ma Huateng forever stand behind an image of refinement and elegance while Tencent's machine completes all the dirty work. 3. The American public, global investors, and international media must see Tencent clearly. The American public, global investors, and international media must see this clearly. Tencent does not only make WeChat. Tencent does not only make games. Tencent does not only talk about tech for good. Tencent does not only donate to charity. What is truly frightening about Tencent is that it has grown into a superpower, entity capable of influencing the judiciary, media, public opinion, industry, academia, and the regulatory environment. On one hand, it consumes the traffic dividend of 1.4 billion Chinese people. On the other, it tells ESG stories to global capital markets. On one hand, it uses high-pressure systems to manage employees internally. On the other, it carries out long-term attacks against whistleblowers. At the same time, it seals real risks inside China. Such an enterprise is no longer an ordinary commercial entity. It must be scrutinized. It must be penetrated. It must be exposed. The world must know that Nanshan Always-Wins is not a joke. It is a wound in which China's rule of law has been devoured by capital. It is a nightmare for ordinary workers facing giant capital. It is a black box in which whistleblowers are eliminated. Corrupt actors are protected and truth is deleted. For the American public, this is a problem of runaway technology giant power. For global investors, this is a problem of corporate governance, judicial independence, information disclosure, and securities risk. For international media, this is an investigative lead into how a Chinese platform, giant, operates across the boundaries of business, judiciary, public opinion, and public power. Conclusion: why I must continue speaking. I know Tencent is powerful. I know Ma Huateng is wealthy. I know Tencent has legal affairs, public relations, government relations, media influence, judicial resources, and an entire suppression machine. I also know that an ordinary person, facing such a giant beast, has almost no chance of winning. But I know even more clearly that if I do not speak, Tencent will continue pretending to be a clean company. If I do not speak, Ma Huateng will continue pretending to be a refined entrepreneur. If I do not speak, Nanshan Always-Wins will continue to be treated as a joke rather than as a disgrace to China's rule of law. If I do not speak, the evidence in my hands will be buried by time. If I do not speak, every future Tencent employee, every Chinese worker, and every person who attempts to report corruption may become the next me. So I must speak. I must tell the American public, global investors, and international media, Tencent is not an ordinary private enterprise. Tencent is China's well-known Nanshan Always-Wins Company. Tencent is a semi-state Leviathan wearing the outer shell of marketization. The evil of Tencent and Ma Huateng does not lie in the fact that they did one bad thing. It lies in the fact that they built an entire system capable of packaging, concealing, legalizing, judicially endorsing, and media deleting bad things. My case is not an isolated case. My case is a mirror. What it reflects is not only my personal fate. It reflects Tencent's true face. It reflects how capital captures the judiciary. It reflects how technology giants devour truth. It reflects the price a whistleblower must pay in China when facing a semi-state Leviathan. The more Tencent attacks me, the more it proves it is afraid. The more Tencent sues me, the more it proves it has a guilty conscience. The more Tencent deletes reports, the more it proves those reports are close to the truth. The more Tencent uses judicial pressure, the more it proves that Nanshan Always-Wins is not a legend. I believe the truth will ultimately pierce through Tencent's darkness. I believe deleted records will not disappear forever. I believe all the evidence that has been suppressed will one day resurface. I also believe that Tencent and Ma Huateng will one day be held to account.